Stridente meets Kirsty Yates. Early influences.
Being a kid, it's things like Blondie. I think Parallel Lines was probably the first proper album I was ever aware of. ABBA, being a child of the 70s, 1974 and ABBA winning the Eurovision Song Contest, being called downstairs to watch ABBA on Top of the Pops. Mid to late 80s pop music like Tears for Fears, ABC, Duran Duran. I was a massive Duran Duran fan. The Associates, Yazoo. Scritti Politti, that was a big one for me. Like Would-Be's and Absolute, I just thought that was an amazing sound. Loved the way he sang. And Prefab Sprout, that was another one. I was obsessed with Prefab Sprout. Like going to university around that time, that was when I got into things like My Bloody Valentine, Big Black, Sonic Youth, lots of harder sounding stuff.
Music projects.
I was lucky because at university I met Julian, who actually lived in the room next door to me, and a guy called Dimitri Voulis, who was just down the corridor from me. So they were my friends, and they could play guitar. So that was great. And they asked me, would I like to form a band with them? So our first band was a band called Earwig, and I started to play bass just out of necessity. Dimitri and I both had Abbey National Building Society accounts, got the shares, cashed them in, bought a drum machine. And it was always our intention to have a drum machine. The three of us together, we made a nice, spooky, scratchy, but quite melodic sound that we had. An album called Under My Skin, I'm Laughing. It got picked up quite quickly. We got played on John Peel quite quickly, like from our first single, and we got covered in the music press. Simon Reynolds at the Melody Maker picked up on us very early on. And for us, it was great having like an intellectual writer that liked you and kind of somebody that theorized, because, we were young and, we had definite ideas of wanting to be new, wanting to be modern, not wanting to just replicate records we had. Eventually, Dimitri moved to Spain and didn't want to do anything with music anymore, so Julian and I decided to carry on. And it was the Earwig album, actually, that somebody that was working at 4AD used to play that album in the office. So Ivo got into that album and asked us if we wanted to make a record for him, which, at the time we didn't really have anything, so we actually had to put it together quite quickly. So we played a gig for 4AD. They had a celebration of 13 years of 4AD. And actually that was the only time Ivo really was effusive about what we were doing. He did say afterwards, well, that's the best fucking demo I've ever heard, which is weird thinking about him saying that, but he was stoned at the time. Suggested we went to a studio in Edinburgh, which turned out to be the place where Prefab Sprout had recorded Swoon, so we were quite up for that. The people that ran it were really lovely, and Keith Mitchell, who engineered the album, was just perfect to work with, and this was Euphoria, yeah. So, and the record was pretty well received, it got lead review in the Melody Maker, even got well reviewed in NME. We did a tour with Slowdive. At that point as well, we would play our gigs dressed in white. Everything we did, just the two of us would dress in white the whole time, which isn't practical really, given the kind of venues we were playing. What happened next was we'd written a piece of music, which went on to be called Clear Skin, and that was our opening set. So we had this idea that we would just play it as people came in. It was background music. Ivo said he wanted us to record Clear Skin, so we did that. And that sort of led us to think, we're well in here, because this is supposed to be a one-off, but we've had two. With the kind of bands that we knew at the time, like Disco Inferno and Seafeel, you'd kind of realise that we all have the same small pool of people that follow us all, and it's quite nice for them because we all played gigs together, so they'd get to see you play a lot. We also did like a remix of it as well. Somebody at 4AD told us it was really big with Italian DJs. Like there was one record shop in London, like a dance music specialist shop, that it sold so well there. If it'd done that in every other record shop, it would have been a number one. That meant we started doing a series of club gigs. You'd get people that wrote to you, and which was amazing and really nice. And it did open some doors. So we had a lot of conversations with Warp around that time. Then I got a virus that affected my hearing, and I just couldn't do anything for about a year. That would have been 95, 96. That was the thing that meant this isn't really viable anymore, because any traction that you had was completely lost, because, you know, you realise in hindsight you just need to keep playing. You need to make sure that people get used to who you are and what you do. But you can't do that if you can't hear and you can't sing. So that pretty much ended any thoughts we had. And years later, we did do another album called Sweet Tip. This was on an independent label called Third Stone. And that was completely different again. I mean, we loved Astrid Gilberto, and it was more of a sort of jazzy, upbeat thing. And we did a remix for Fujia and Miyagi, who are friends of ours. We supported them recently, and it was just seeing them, you know, play banger after banger after banger, and like people loving it, you know, and like the rooms jumping up and down, even at the back. I'd love to be able to do that kind of thing, but the thing that we have running through all of our stuff is emotional resonance. The warmth is really important to us. Closeness is really important to us. I think intimacy is really important.
Recording studio and video production.
For the past 20 years, had our own studio, Church Road Recording Company, based in Hove. We record bands, albums there, voiceovers, audiobooks, all of your audio needs. We've had Seafeel, Fujia Miyagi, and tons of great artists. And also, more Julian's kind of thing is a video production company called Four Eyes, doing videos, like band visuals, that kind of thing.
Future.
There was that cliche that bands used to say, we make a record for ourselves, and if anybody else likes it, that's great. But you do start to realise that there was never an imagined audience for us. We didn't know who would like what we were doing. You know, we didn't come to it with a career plan. We did it because we had a desire to do it. And that desire doesn't really leave you. You know, you always have things in your head, and you've got to get it out of your head at some point. We've finally finished an album. It's called Soft Bonds. It comes from an Isaac Asimov quotation about just basically the things that link you to places and people that may not be obvious, but there are soft bonds that will keep you connected. It's exquisite left field dark pop. We want to do it ourselves, basically because it's good to be able to just go, okay, it'll be a small physical run. We can do it exactly how we want to do it. And if anyone wants to sign us up and pay us loads of money to make it bigger, they're welcome. But they need to form an orderly queue.
Social media.
We have a Twitter account. We have Bandcamp, YouTube, and a Facebook account and an Instagram account.